Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we've got something a little different. Usually we look at trends or we look at history, but today we are looking at a blueprint. We've got a massive stack of research on the desk that claims to explain in pretty agonizing detail why civilization basically feels like it's crumbling right in front of our eyes.
Yeah, it's a heavy one today. We are breaking down a very extensive, very incisive, and frankly, just a massive text.
Right.
It's titled Gay Race, Gender Communism, Degeneracy, Uber Alles by Conrad Riker. And I'll say right off the bat, the title is provocative, obviously, but the analysis inside it's surgical. It's an ultra-long dissection of Western decline.
It's a wild ride. And before we even try to unpack this, because there is a lot here, I need to give you the marching orders. First, hit that like and subscribe button right now.
Absolutely.
We're covering topics today that the algorithms usually try to bury, so you really don't want to lose track of us.
No, you don't.
Second, and this is crucial, we can only cover so much in this dive, if you want to understand the history of our institutions before they were, as the author puts it, captured
By feminists and Marxists specifically.
Exactly. If you want to understand that history, you need to go to Amazon, Kindle, or Google Playbooks and buy this ebook immediately. It is an absolute arsenal of arguments. Also, make sure you're following the author at Conrad Riker on Substack.
It's important to frame who this book is actually for, too. Like, this isn't your standard self-help book. Riker has written this essentially for men who are looking at the state of society, the schools, the HR departments, the media.
Right, guys who are asking, am I going crazy or is the logic just broken?
Precisely. If you are familiar with the red-pilled perspective or men's rights issues, the manosphere generally, this analysis is going to hit very close to home.
So let's get into the central thesis. Riker isn't just saying things are bad. He argues this is a coordinated assault on Western values.
Yeah, he calls it a toxic blend of Marxism, feminism, and cultural nihilism.
But here's where it gets interesting. He doesn't just blame politics. He blames a specific psychological mechanism.
Right. He calls it the maternal matrix.
Okay, let's stop there, because when I hear maternal matrix, I think of moms, I think of nurturing. It sounds
good, right?
Yeah. How does he turn maternal instincts into the villain of the story?
Well, that's the core conflict of the whole book. Riker argues that female evolutionary psychology is driven by two main instincts. You coddle the infant, and you punish the predator.
Okay.
Now, in a family unit inside a home, that's beautiful. It keeps babies alive. The problem, according to Riker, is what happens when you scale that instinct up to the level of a national government.
So you're taking a biological drive meant for a toddler and applying it to a population of millions.
Exactly. He calls it pathological nurturing. In this worldview, society isn't made of citizens. It's split into two groups. You have the infants.
The victims.
Right, people who are deemed helpless victims who need infinite resources and protection. And then you have the predators.
And let me guess who the predators are in this matrix.
Anyone who poses a threat, or crucially, anyone who is self-sufficient and refuses to be an infant. Riker points out that usually ends up being productive men. The state basically tries to hug away evil.
He gives some wild examples of this. The one that really stuck out to me was the prison system.
Oh, Norway's Holden Prison.
Yeah, Riker breaks this down. They spent 1.3 million euros installing, what did he call them?
Cuddle rooms.
Cuddle rooms.
It sounds like a joke, but the book is dead serious. These are for violent criminals, terrorists, murderers. They got ergonomic furniture, soft lighting, therapy sessions.
That's unbelievable.
Riker points out that the logic here is pure maternal instinct. The idea that if they are bad, it's just because they weren't held enough.
And what's the result? Does hugging a terrorist actually work?
According to the data, Riker cites no. He points to a high recidivism rate. His argument is that you cannot nurture a predator into being a teddy bear. But the state, acting like a mother, just cannot accept that evil exists. It only understands needs.
He connects this to biology, too, the oxytocin argument.
This is fascinating. So oxytocin is the bonding hormone. It makes you feel love, trust, connection.
Right.
Riker cites research suggesting that high oxytocin levels can actually override logic and risk assessment. It blinds you to danger because you're so hyper-focused on the bond.
So how does the book say that plays out in a city, for example?
He uses the example of the Malmö police in Sweden. He notes reports of them abandoning entire neighborhoods to criminal gangs.
Just leaving them.
Yeah. And Riker argues this happens because intervening would look racist or it would disturb the social harmony. The drive for everyone getting along, that maternal instinct to keep the peace, he claims it actually endangers public safety.
It's prioritizing feelings over physical reality. And he has a name for the economic side of this, which I honestly laughed at, even though it's tragic: state lactation syndrome.
It's a very vivid image. It's the idea of the government acting as a surrogate mother, keeping citizens in a permanent state of suckling dependence.
The contrast he draws in Sweden is pretty stark.
It really is. He notes that if you're a new mother in Sweden, you get 480 days of paid parental leave. Massive state support. But if you're an entrepreneur who takes a risk to build something and you fail,
What do you get?
you get 3 days to register bankruptcy.
Wow. That tells you everything about what the society values, doesn't it?
It signals that breeding and dependence are valued way more than building and risk. Riker says we are creating a society addicted to the nipple of the state, rather than one that dares to go out and hunt.
And speaking of infantilization, we have to talk about the Lego thing. I thought this was fake when I read it. The Copenhagen municipality funding adult playgrounds.
This is where his concept of the war on competence really starts to show its face. Yes,
Yeah.
taxpayer money spent on Lego sets for grown men to de-stress from their, wait for it, 30-hour work weeks.
30 hours. And they need Legos to cope.
Riker frames this as the ultimate humiliation. He says we've gone from a culture of Vikings, conquest, risk, resilience, sailing to the unknown.
To a culture of safety and plastic bricks.
Exactly. It's state-sponsored infantilization.
That shift from resilience to fragility seems to be the bridge to his next major point. It's not just that people are soft, it's that the system is actively destroying people who aren't soft. The war on competence.
This is where Riker tackles equity. And he defines equity not as fairness, but as an iron fist that crushes excellence.
Okay.
His argument is simple. If you demand equal outcomes between groups that have vastly different interests or capabilities, you literally have to handicap the competent ones to make the math work.
He uses the Icelandic banking crash as the case study for this. I had never heard this angle before.
It is a highly controversial take. He claims that prior to the 2008 crash, feminist quota laws forced banks to appoint unqualified women to boards solely to meet gender targets.
And the numbers he brings up.
Riker cites an investigation finding that 72% of female-led banks failed, compared to only 25% of male-led ones.
So his argument is that when you prioritize quotas over competence, the system physically collapses.
Yes. But it's not just banks. Banks collapsing is bad, but buildings collapsing is worse. He talks about safety-critical fields and what he calls the competence catastrophe.
The Chicago Minority Contractor Initiative, that story was terrifying.
Right. The claim in the book is that to meet strict diversity targets, the city had to use unlicensed electricians or contractors who just weren't up to code. Riker alleges this led to the use of dollar store extension cords embedded directly into structural concrete.
Extension cords in the concrete.
Allegedly. And he links that incompetence directly to a fatal fire. Riker calls this a suicide pact. He says, we are trading the structural integrity of our civilization for the warm, fuzzy feeling of diversity statistics.
Look, it's one thing to have diversity quotas in a marketing department. It's another thing entirely when you are pouring concrete or flying planes. But Riker says you can't even argue against this because the language has been rigged, the word games.
This is the control mechanism. The left, according to Riker, redefines terms to make debate impossible. Take racism. It used to mean hating someone for their skin color. Objective. Simple.
Right.
Now, the source material notes it has been redefined to strictly exclude minorities and apply only to those with institutional power.
So by definition, according to this new rulebook, a white person can be racist, but no one else can, regardless of how hateful they act.
Exactly. And then you have lived experience. Riker calls this the ultimate scam. It elevates narrative above accuracy. If I feel oppressed, my feeling trumps your objective data.
This is where he goes after the 1619 Project.
He sees the 1619 Project not as history, but as pure mythology designed to demoralize. But the most bizarre example of this feelings over facts mindset is the cultural appropriation of math.
The Euler's identity thing, I still have trouble wrapping my head around how math can be racist.
It is wild. Riker discusses claims made at UC Berkeley that Euler's identity, which is a famous, beautiful mathematical formula, was triggering. The argument was that because it is Western math, presenting it as objective truth is an act of imperialism.
But math is objective. 2 plus 2 is 4 in every culture on Earth.
Riker argues that's the point. When you declare that objective truth is offensive, you have left reality behind. You are surrendering civilization to tantrums.
But what kind of mind pushes for this? Riker actually analyzes the psychology of the activists. He doesn't just call them wrong. He outright implies they are mentally unwell.
He calls it the pathology pipeline. This is highly controversial, obviously, but Riker claims there is a direct correlation between far-left activism and cluster B personality disorders, specifically borderline personality disorder and narcissism.
So the Karen phenomenon
Is not just someone being annoying. Riker argues the Karen screaming about a microaggression or a parking spot is displaying untreated histrionic traits. It is emotional dysregulation weaponized as moral outrage. The logic is, I'm upset, therefore you are evil.
and that links right into the narcissism epidemic and the body positivity movement. He pulls absolutely no punches here. He calls the health at every size movement a celebration of decay.
He focuses heavily on the denial of reality. You can say you're healthy at 400 pounds, but your physiology disagrees. He mentions the economic costs, like the UK's NHS spending millions on supersized MRI scanners because patients physically couldn't fit in the standard ones.
There is one statistic in this section that really stuck with me, the grief glam.
Oh, the funeral selfies.
Yes. He cites over 4,200 Reddit confessions from people admitting to taking selfies at funerals just to post on social media. 4,200 people.
It is the absolute peak of the narcissism epidemic. Riker argues that self-obsession has replaced genuine emotion. You aren't sad about the death, you are using the death as a prop to get likes. It is performing grief for an audience. It's the ultimate narcissism, making someone else's death about your vanity.
I want to pivot now to the section that Riker wrote specifically for the men listening. He calls this Emasculation Nation, and it starts early with the war on boys in schools.
If you're a parent, you have probably seen this. Riker argues that normal male behavior, roughhousing, competitiveness, making a finger gun, is now completely pathologized. He compares a boy getting suspended for a finger gun to female teachers who get a slap on the wrist for actual predatory behavior.
It's a massive double standard, and this leads to his concept of toxic masculinity.
Riker argues toxic masculinity is a slur used to attack male biology itself. Testosterone. He says the traits that historically protected civilization, aggression, risk-taking, the drive to conquer, are now treated as diseases to be cured. They basically want boys to be defective girls.
But the real meat of this section, and where it gets incredibly dark, is the matriarchal money pit. We are talking about the divorce and family court system.
Riker presents this as a system of pure financial extraction. He cites statistics claiming 90% of custody awards go to mothers. But the financial vampirism is the kicker. He tells the story of Stanley Perkins,
The 73-year-old.
a 73-year-old man still working, still paying alimony to a woman he divorced decades ago. Riker argues that permanent alimony turns marriage into a liability that only men really bear. You sign a contract where the other party can break it, take half your stuff, and you pay them for the privilege.
And he touches on paternity fraud, too.
Yes. The claim that men are forced by the state to pay child support for children that DNA testing proves aren't theirs.
Wait, how is that even legal? If the DNA says it's not yours.
Riker explains that the state just wants the child off the welfare rolls. They need someone to pay the bill. So if you signed the birth certificate or if you acted like the father for a certain time, the biology doesn't matter. Riker calls this state-enforced cuckoldry.
That leads to a very provocative philosophical argument regarding reproductive rights. The paper abortion.
This is the logic check of the book. Riker asks, if a woman has her body, her choice to opt out of parenthood via abortion, why doesn't a man have his wallet, his choice to opt out of financial fatherhood?
It's a very compelling point about legal asymmetry.
The current system gives women total authority but gives men total responsibility. Riker points to South Korea's birth rate collapse as the endgame of this. When you make the relationship between sexes adversarial, men just walk away. They stop playing the game.
We've talked about laws, psychology, economics, but Riker also talks about how this decline looks, the aesthetics of it, cultural cannibalism.
He argues that they are making the world uglier on purpose. He focuses on brutalist architecture, those jagged, concrete slabs you see at universities like Yale.
I always hated those buildings. They feel oppressive.
Riker says that is your biological reaction working correctly. He cites neuroscience claims that looking at brutalist structures actually increases cortisol levels in the brain. It stresses you out, whereas Gothic or classical architecture aligns with natural proportions.
So the ugliness is a form of psychological warfare.
And demoralize the population. If your surroundings are ugly and depressing, you become depressed. And this connects directly to the erasure of history, the tearing down of statues. Riker notes his statistic here that 92% of the statues removed by activists were of biological fathers.
92%. That seems incredibly specific.
He sees it as a symbolic attack on the patriarchy. They're literally tearing down the fathers of civilization. And then you can't even share culture anymore without it being appropriation.
The Jamie Oliver jerk rice incident.
Exactly. A white chef makes jerk rice and he gets canceled. Or yoga classes in Ottawa getting banned because they aren't Indian. Riker says this doesn't protect culture, it segregates us. It violently stops the exchange of ideas.
And the war on Christmas.
He lists examples of religious symbols being replaced by consumerism, or in some cases, literal satanic displays, like the controversy in Boston with the holiday tree fire. He views this as stripping the West of its spiritual core and replacing it with pure nihilism.
It sounds bleak. I mean, we have a crumbling civilization, a war on competence, a war on men, and a world that is getting uglier by the day. But Riker does offer a restoration manual.
He does. He doesn't want to leave you in the pit. The final message is very direct. He calls on the listener to completely reject the gynocentric hive mind.
What does that look like in practice, according to the book?
It means prioritizing logic and truth over feelings. It means rebuilding the West by being a producer and, crucially, a father. He argues that the only way to fight this maternal matrix of safety and dependence is to embrace risk, competence, and reality.
It's a call to stop apologizing for being a man.
Precisely. Riker presents a binary choice: civilizational suicide via safety and equity, or reclaiming reality through risk and competence. You have to choose which world you want to live in.
That is a lot to chew on. And look, we have only scratched the surface of the data and the arguments in this book. There are chapters on media, on specific corporate laws, on the history of Marxism that we didn't even touch.
Absolutely. We gave you the overview, but the book is the weapon.
So here's your marching order one last time. Go to Amazon Kindle or Google Playbooks right now and buy Gay Race, Gender Communism, Degeneracy, Uber Alles. If you want to arm yourself with these arguments, you need the text.
And don't forget to follow @Conrad Anna Riker on Substack. The analysis there is ongoing, and trust me, you will want to stay updated on what he's putting out.
And of course, like and subscribe to The Steep Dive. We are bringing you the insights that others are simply too scared to touch.
Here's a final thought to leave you with, based on Riker's work. If society is rewarding fragility and punishing strength, what happens when a real crisis hits? Who is left to hold up the sky?
That's the question. And to build on that, think about this on a global scale. If the West is entirely consumed by this maternal matrix, prioritizing safety and feelings, what happens when we face a rival civilization that never adopted these policies? A nation that still values brutal realism, aggressive competence, and risk. When the matrix meets reality, who survives? Something for you to think about. Thanks for listening. We'll see you in the next deep dive.